That's all you need to do.
Going live.
And we're live. Hello, everybody.
Hey, everyone. I'm Jenny.
I'm Paul.
And we're with GoBox Art Crate, monthly subscription box designed specifically for acrylic painting.
And beginners and experienced people getting back into it, all of the above.
Yeah, definitely. We can give you some new ideas and some fresh new canvas and paint to try out. Mm-hmm. You can check out our website, gobox.com. That's G-O-G-H. Probably like pronounced like box if we were doing it the Dutch pronunciation. But we like GoBox. It flows a little better.
It sounds nicer. It's a little more appealing to those of us of the English ears.
So welcome newcomers. Hopefully you guys are enjoying your Friday night. Or if you end up painting this another night or day, hopefully you are
whenever you're
having
painting
a
is
good
the
time.
right time to be painting.
So let's zoom in now. Or first let's do a toast.
Let's toast.
Let's toast to having fun painting on a Friday night.
Let's do that.
Cheers.
Cheers. Clink. Ching.
Now I'll zoom in.
Let's do it.
So let's see what we're doing.
Oh, well, we're going to start with a blank canvas. Well, let's take a look at Sakura Lake.
So what inspired you on this?
You.
What? Oh, because I told you what to do.
Yeah, she told me what to do. No, this is kind of a rehash of a similar painting we used to do in the studios that had...
The bridge.
The bridge.
Yeah, it was called Pink Bridge. I pulled it up. I was like, hey, why don't you do something like this?
Yeah, and so I kind of did it. I was thinking like, okay, it's kind of Valentine's-y, but we don't really like to hit like specific holidays too much. So the only way it's really, has that kind of feel is because we've got a couple of swans here, and you can do one if you want. I kind of did two, and kind of did a little hidden heart. Totally optional. We got a couple comments there.
Yeah, just everybody saying hi.
Hello, hello. So I know that I want to apologize. It's never great to start a video with apologizing, but I want to apologize for writing a novel of instructions this month.
Yeah.
I really went to town on writing, and that may be intimidating to look at. We are going to use it maybe very loosely as a guide, so people who get the subscription box also get these instructions.
You just got real wordy.
I did. I got really wordy, and I think it's because like the steps are not that many actual steps, but a lot of little things happen in each step. So that's kind of why.
Oh, so you didn't take enough pictures.
That could be. But really, I didn't miss anything. And just I got wordy, just like I'm doing right now.
Yep.
So, best thing to do is just be over all of that, and we'll just get started here. So, we are going to, excuse me again. I've got a little bit of a dry throat tonight.
Good thing you have that ranch water.
I've got ranch water. We are actually going to use our coasters tonight to measure, and that's something we've used them as templates, and actually we're going to use it as a template. This is actually going to get a lot of use tonight. So those of you who have been with us for a while, you can tell we've got new colors for our coasters. We used to have kind of our GoBox blue.
Yeah, we changed it up.
Is what we sent, and we decided let's change it up and do green. So let's start off with our biggest paintbrush.
And we have 4 colors.
Yeah, we got 4 colors. We just have the red, blue, black, and white. And those 3 colors are basically 2 colors plus black and white go a long ways for us tonight. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Jenny's going to try to keep an eye on.
Oh, yeah. So we are asked, someone asked what canvas size. It's 11 by 14.
So, yeah, we're using an 11 by 14.
But you can, if you have a rectangular canvas, you can transfer this to a lot of different sizes.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you could even do it on a square canvas if you had one. You just kind of have to be a little bit selective about where you put your focal points and stuff. So, to get started, we're going to do a lot of this painting with our largest paintbrush. So, what I'm going to do at first is I'm going to mix together a little bit. I don't want the sky to be super blue or super purple, so we're going to have a little bit of blue, a touch of red, and some white, and we're going to kind of go for, what's that color we always call? Periwinkle. You know, the color in the crayons. It can be a little bit on the blue side of periwinkle. Kind of a dirty denim kind of color, maybe. And basically what we're going to use is we're going to line up our coaster at the very top of our canvas, and I'm just going to put a little line at the bottom. maybe do this a couple of times just so you've got a little bit more.
Oh, is this how you're setting your horizon line?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You don't normally do this.
No, you know what? The March box, I did the same thing, but from the bottom.
Hmm.
So that kind of gives us a quick little reference that we can connect the dots. Aha! There we go. Now, the other thing we want to do is I'm going to take this coaster, and I'm going to set it so it's just a smidge below our horizon line, so maybe 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch or so. And I'm very loosely going to trace around it.
And if you're doing this on your own without the kit, you could use like the bottom of a mug or small bowl.
Anything.
Lid of something.
You can freehand it like we have done for years. Now basically what we're going to do is we are going to work away from this with that color. And you can be messy. Yeah, I'm messy. I'm a messy painter, and it's perfectly okay. What I want you to try to avoid is just doing rings of color away from there. It's really a natural instinct. So don't worry about painting into there. Move your brush in all kinds of different directions. Mix more paint as you need it. And it's okay if you get a little bit of variation in your paint as you go. In fact, as you move away from that center, if you get a little bit darker, it's good. It's what we want to do.
We had a nice full moon the other night on the 16th.
Last night? The night before
Last night was actually technically a waning gibbous.
We're all into it. We've got like this.
We've got a moon chart at home.
We do. It's right in the hallway of our front entry. Our son is very much into that type of stuff, as is our daughter now.
Yeah.
But our son's kind of OG about it. He's our go-to.
Yeah, we always would text him, "Hey Hayden, what's the moon phase?" Well, he has Asperger's syndrome, so he gets really into things, and for a while he was really into astronomy and that kind of thing, and he still loves the moon phases.
He does indeed.
So now our whole family loves it.
So one of the things that I want to encourage you to do is not be too perfectionistic.
So you're getting a little more purple as you move away from.
I'm just mixing a little bit darker color as I'm using less white as I move away, and this is kind of like, you don't have to, but it kind of adds a nice little transition. It helps focus the eye back to the moon a little bit more. If you get little stop and start marks that kind of look like that I just did right there, just take your brush very lightly, brush across the area, barely touching the brush to the canvas. And I like to keep mixing as I go. So a lot of times people like to mix a big batch, but that's okay. I kind of like to just keep mixing paint as I go. I get a lot more variation that way, and to me that's one of the things that helps a painting look like a painting and keeps it from looking like digital art. Nothing wrong with digital art. It's just a different format, different media. And so you can see I've gotten a little bit messy with this. Now, once I get all the way out to the sides, and if I'm going too fast, you guys can pause anytime. But once I get all the way out to the sides, I'm just going to wipe my brush. I've got a paper towel up here you guys can't see. And I'm just going to take some pure white, and I'm going to brush it into the area we left blank for the moon. And if that paint around it's still a little wet, I'm going to wipe my brush off so I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. But you can brush this white into that blue a little bit. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm blending this out a little bit more. So we're getting rid of that just harsh circle, and we're creating the glow away from the moon.
Ugh, my paint's already dry there.
If you run into that, you can always just add a little bit of your mix. We'll come back and paint the moon in again. You can always just go to one of your corners that's still wet, pick up a little bit of that paint and just bring it back over. That's kind of all we're going for right now. for you to catch up just a little bit here, Jenny, because I'm sure everybody else is too.
Yeah, you're turboing.
I'm turboing.
So your little moon area got way smaller and not circular.
Right, but we're going to come back and redo the moon.
Yeah, I figured that's what you did.
So basically all we're really doing is we use that to trace to give ourselves a basic reference for how large the moon is going to be, but then by bringing the white into that center and pulling it back out into the slightly wet sky color, we created glow. Mm-hmm. So now when we come back and bring the moon back in after this has dried, then we'll get a nice organic feeling glow around the moon instead of trying to create one then. Okay, so our next step we're going to work on is we're going to start basically there's a term that's called underpainting, and basically it's kind of like the idea of we are preparing the canvas for additional paint work. It's like a primer. So a lot of times, like if you're new to painting and you're seeing all this stuff and you're really worried about doing it perfect, I just want to reassure you that the first 80% of the painting, there's very little that can go wrong, because most of it's underpainting, and then we do detail on top of that, and that's where things start to come together. So this part, everything we're doing is fixable. What we're going to do next is I'm going to mix more of the same color, but maybe with a touch more red.
Oh, thank you. I hope I say your name right. Jaslyn. I love this YouTube channel. Thank you.
Awesome.
We
Thank
love
you
hearing
so
that.
much.
It's so nice.
All right, so I'm going kind of more of a plum kind of violet color. And basically what we're going to do is I'm going to turn my brush on edge, so the bristles are like this, not like this. And just kind of start right along this horizon line-ish area, starting on the outside edges. When I get down under my light area, I want this to break up very, very stripy, very almost tiger stripy. We can have lots of stripes all over, but we want to be a little bit fuller on the outside edges. And it's okay if this is a little bit redder, because we're going to be doing our cherry trees, which when the term Sakura is the Japanese word for cherry, I believe.
Cherry blossoms.
Cherry blossoms. And yeah, that's the flower specifically, right?
I think so.
I think so. I don't know. And so having little extra bits of reds and pinks and violets and purples and all that stuff over in this area is totally fine. Now we're going to come back, and I'm probably going to go ahead and do like one side of the canvas at once. I feel like the paint's drying kind of fast tonight for us. We got our furnace cranked pretty good though, so.
Yeah, this space is so big and open that when we come in and crank the furnace on these nights, it's like, oh, there's a $280
Yeah.
natural gas bill.
So what we're going to kind of do is essentially is when we get done with our waters, we're going to want to make sure that we've got paint covering everything. What I'm going to start doing real quick is in these areas where there's little extra canvas showing, I'm just going to carefully get a little bit of white from the edge of my puddle of white, and I'm just going to start just kind of sloppily sliding some of this white in some of those gaps and let it overlap into the other colors. So we're going to pick up and end up with I had some extra blue on the back side of my brush, it looks like. All good. But I'm not trying to cover everything. I'm trying to fill in the blanks, but also let them interact with it a little bit, with each other a little bit, so they create natural little transitions between the colors, but not necessarily what I would call a full-on blend, if that makes sense.
So probably what helps is to not push real hard.
Yeah, don't push down very hard. Just kind of, you're just going to want to think of like the paint sliding off the brush onto the canvas rather than pushing the paint into the canvas.
So then you get the dark and light areas without them completely blending together.
Right. And it does feel a little bit muddy when we do this beginning part. And that's okay. It's better to be a little bit muddy now than it is to try to come back and create different depths and textures and things like that.
And we're just underpainting.
It's just underpainting. But it's, you remember Emerald Lagasse?
Mm-hmm.
He would.
How could I forget?
Right? I mean, who could forget Emerald? But I was thinking about this the other night when I was cooking, and this is actually applies to what we're doing right now. And I was making some pasta, and I remember he used to say, "I don't know where you get your water, but where I come, mine doesn't come seasoned."
Where I come from, mine doesn't come seasoned. Yeah,
Right.
say something like that.
And so, like, he'd throw water in the pasta water. I mean, throw salt in the pasta water to season the water so it seasons the pasta. Basically, what we're kind of doing right now is we're seasoning the canvas.
Ooh.
So we're just adding a little bam, boom. We'll call it boom. I don't want to get copyright issues. Shazam. No, wait. No, that could be copyright issues, too.
I think mine's grape. It's got a lot of purple. I don't know. I guess grape isn't really a seasoning.
That's fine. That's fine. So rather than just having like one smooth color, we're just having some seasoning going on here. Now I'm going to do the same thing in from the left. I'm kind of leaving, and I know one side of the canvas is always a little easier than the other.
Depending on if you're left or right-handed.
Yeah, especially like for you guys, it's probably a little easier because you can actually move your canvas around, but I kind of have to keep mine in place. So.
You know, I was thinking here, because we always had a lot of this issue with our live classes, you should explain how people keep from having scooped brush strokes.
Oh.
By, locking the wrist.
Yeah, so what Jenny's talking about, and I'll do it down in here, is scooped brush stroke. Like we're trying to do like a, you're talking about when it falls off? Or are you talking about
like this kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of times if you get really wristy, you'll get almost wristy business. You get like little banana boats, right? And so if you're right-handed, like I literally can't move my body over here because there's like a light stand like 6 inches away over here. But the way you keep from getting that, because sometimes it's right, but in this kind of case, we want it to be pretty flat. The way you do it is you just lock your wrist so it's not moving, and you just move your arm side to side and let your fingers kind of control the tension.
That way you won't look like you've got some kind of suction going on under your water that's sucking everything down.
Right.
Scooped.
And a lot of times the other thing is like if you're painting on this side of the canvas, it's really easy to keep it going straight, but as you move this way, your wrist wants to go that direction, so you really want to focus on keeping your arm going this way. Or you could do like I do and just switch hands sometimes. That just shows how unimportant it is to be perfect with this. All right. So I've got a little bit darker color over here. That's okay. It's going to be different. And I'm going to do the same thing. This time I'm going to kind of start more in the middle underneath our moon. Just pure white. Don't worry about this horizon line. We're going to kind of come back in and add some trees and things like that. And it's perfectly, I got a little too dark over here on this left-hand side. It's okay. It'll all work in the end. But one of the things, like this particular part where we're putting in the reflection of where the moon's going to be, and it doesn't have to be exact right now because we're going to add more highlights and stuff later when things get a little bit more dialed in. Because when we put trees and stuff in, that's going to affect where the actual highlights are. But a lot of times people get really like without a lot of edge to it. And what happens is when you step back a little bit, it just looks like a stripe. And so you want this choppiness to be in there. Oh, I love these beginning stages. They're so awful.
Well, remember the swan, the shading.
Oh yeah, well it's just like, it's like a, what was that old tale, the ugly duckling?
Yeah, turns into the swan.
Yeah.
You always used to use analogy in class of
Middle schoolers? Oh.
Growing out a haircut.
Oh, yeah.
Growing out a bad haircut.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad haircut. It's just that in-between stage between short hair and long hair where maybe that mid-length is hard to look the way you want it to look.
But what was your middle school? You did use
They're not cute and adorable children, and they're not mature adults yet.
This is the phase we're in.
Yeah.
We're in middle school right now, everybody.
And if any of you are middle schoolers, don't take me seriously. I am basically a middle schooler in an almost 50-year-old body, so.
And I've got pictures of him in middle school, which we could laugh about sometime, because
What a cute kid.
we were all like, this was the 80s, and yeah.
Late 80s.
For me, it was big bangs with Aquanet.
I'm pretty sure I had a rockin' mullet with spiky hair on top.
You did. You had the Captain Planet hair.
I looked like Captain Planet. It wasn't even just I had the Captain Planet haircut. I literally looked like Captain Planet.
Yes, actually, you're right. You totally did.
My skin color was a little different, but, you know, I wasn't blue. Played a lot of sports, so I was very tan.
Yeah, your freshman picture, you're just like a super tan boy.
It's George Hamilton.
Yes. That's funny.
I was going to bust that SNL joke out, but nobody else would get it. So that's kind of where we want to be. You can see my horizon line's not perfect. I don't want it to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect, especially in this case. If we were doing like an ocean, even there might be some swell. But next thing we're going to do... You about there?
Yeah.
Okay. So again...
Mine got a little purple, so I'm just adding a little blue back in.
Actually, in the instructions, we actually do add blue back in later.
Okay.
Because I want it to kind of sit back on top. But the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to use our coaster again, and I'm going to move it so it's just... Now be careful, your paint's going to be wet, so when you put your coaster down, you might get a little bit of paint on the back of it.
Don't worry, you get a new one next month.
You get a new one every month, but just when you take it off, make sure you're set it someplace where you don't care if you maybe get a little bit of paint on your table or whatever.
Oh yeah, in fact, a lot of people have mentioned that they use the tissue paper that comes in the box.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And the other thing is if you ever get paint on your desk or your table or whatever, gel hand sanitizer
works amazing.
Is about the best thing you can use to clean it up, because you can, like a little speck of paint, you can put, it's the alcohol in the sanitizer that breaks down the paint, and the gel keeps it from evaporating too fast. So you can just put a little bit on there, let it sit there for a few minutes, and come back, and it should scrape right off pretty easy. I am going to go ahead and switch brushes for this step because I want to have a little bit more control. I'm just going to go for the number 8. Number 4 would work fine too. And I'm going to just use pure white now. I'm going to start right at my horizon line. I don't want to go below... Well, actually, I'm going to show you what we are. We are going to go below it, but for this hard line, we are just going to go around.
So you got the moon partially down below the water?
Yep. Just going to give myself a nice line. Now, what I'm going to do below the horizon line is I'm going to take this white, and I'm just going to kind of scribble side to side around this edge. So it's not like a perfect, so you kind of end up with this look. You can kind of scribble some more white in here. And for the upper moon, so one of the things I really like to do with a moon is I don't like filling it in solid. So I'm going to switch back to my biggest brush. Give it a good rinse. Wipe it off. So what I do is I'll rinse and then I wipe it until I'm not seeing very much color, if any, on the paper towel. But I like to kind of start with the moon. The moon, if you look at the moon, it's kind of cratered and darker, more in this bottom third on the left. from the way we see it. So what I kind of do is I kind of come around that area and do like it's like a little bit of a smaller circle and kind of maybe tap to soften up this edge, because we want to, rather than filling this in, I'm just going to kind of
pull from the edges.
Yeah, pull from the edges.
My watch is reminding me it's time to stand. Do these paint strokes count as walking? I wonder if it will count as steps.
It might. And then I just really kind of get this top and right hand side pretty solidly white, about the width of the brush. We're using our 1-inch brush for this, or 3/4 inch, whichever you might have. I don't remember what size ours is. Is
3/4.
3/4.
And if you're painting flat on the desk like we are, you can turn your canvas, or even on an easel, you can turn it like to reach.
Yeah, Jenny's got hers all turned
areas.
cattywampus.
Yeah.
So one of the things you can do, there's 2 ways. You can do it with the big brush. You can go to your number 8. For those of you who are subscribers, we all have kind of the same brush. And you can just take like the number 8, for example, and just kind of scribble that color out and let it be a little bit choppy. You can always, if you feel like, oh, I want more craters, you can pick up a little bit of color from your palette and kind of create some craters or something. And all I do is like, so yeah, you could get real meticulous with it, but just some little swirls and half circles and stuff like that. It's up to you how detailed you want to get with the moon. But I feel like kind of just having a little bit of texture, some good blotchy highlights, not getting too focused in on the details, but also not being super rigid in how you fill it up.
The other thing too is if you get really harsh, dark colors.
Let it dry a little bit.
Yeah, and then just glaze. Let it dry and then glaze over it with some white, and it's like boom, softened up.
You would be surprised though, like you can do a pretty chunky moon up close, and when you step back from it, it really fades out.
How far back?
Oh no, you're doing that thing. Across the street, down the road, maybe in the next town over.
With your glasses off. I always wonder what the other side of the moon looks like. We'll never know.
There's pictures online.
Are there?
Yeah.
Dang.
There's a big alien base over there.
It's where Elon Musk lives secretly.
Could be. Could be. All right. So that's kind of our base foundation. We are going to put more reflection into the water later, but we kind of want to lay things out a little bit more now. Well, you could do a little bit more now. Let's go ahead and do a little bit more now. That feels right. I like to just, again, use the big brush. Very loose, very choppy. Just let the paint sit on top of the other paint. Don't try to push it in and make it... I think one of the things I've noticed is people they don't want things to be choppy and uneven. They want everything blended, and we want to kind of break that feeling that we need to blend things out.
Yeah, we had this discussion yesterday, you and I.
Yeah.
About how we want a painting to look like a painting and not so much like a picture that you've taken with a camera.
Yeah, and actually, like...
Except save that for those hyper-realistic artists that have, like, the patience of a saint.
Well, we finished our paintings yesterday for March, and I've got them sitting here.
Yeah.
And
we'll show them.
We'll show them, but what kind of prompted that was the painting I designed is really very loose. Mm-hmm. Like, it might be the loosest, choppiest painting I've done in here. And I like it. I mean, it's much more...
The people on our Facebook page seem to like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so that's a good place to be. We can always add more highlights. If you look at mine, look at how choppy those edges are. That's how we're going to get the idea that there's the moon in here. If you want to come back later with a smaller brush and, add some little hints of some extra little ribbons of light out here. You can, but sometimes it gets a little, like it feels out of place. So just be careful. You can always paint over. All right, so next thing we're going to do, we're going to create our 2 tree lines. And so the idea of this painting is like this is maybe a river that's kind of working its way back, or it's a lake that is being fed by a river that's kind of going in line with this moon. And what we want to do is we want to kind of create this shadow of our Sakura trees. And so to do that, I'm just going to mix together red and blue, about equal parts. This can be a little bit more red than blue, but you don't want it to necessarily be like burgundy. It's like just a really deep grape color. And when I'm thinking of these trees, I'm really thinking of like the really Japanese garden style cherry trees that you see, and they're more broad and wide than they are tall.
Kind of like a bonsai?
Kind of like a bonsai. And I'm just going to start creating these almost like the tops of some of these trees.
So you're just like doing the foliage first?
Yep, just the foliage. And it's like, there's a coffee place out here called Dutch Bros, and they sell what's called muffin tops. You know, isn't it Dutch Bros that sells the muffin tops? Muffin top is basically if you buy a muffin and you know we all do it. You break the top off and you leave the bottom part and you eat the top. Well,
That's the best part.
Yeah, so they sell just muffin tops, and so I like to think of that shape where it's fairly broad and wider at the bottom, but not very tall.
This is gonna feel kind of scary.
It's all right. It will all survive. Tomorrow's another day. But reality is, we were just suggesting the tops of these.
You should show the original. I need to see it.
Jenny needs to see the original. Well, much of this kind of gets blocked off by the tree. So you can see it's actually just a big mass.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about it too much. On the right-hand side, I do like to kind of have one that's a little taller, kind of maybe hangs out a little further. And then you're actually just going to smudge that bottoms of these down to our horizon. Even if it picks up a little bit of white, it's okay. You can even take a little bit of this color and real loosely kind of suggest some of that darkness down into the water. And that might mean you cover up some of your moon white, but that's the way it would work. A lot of the stuff this painting is very loose. So I know that the finished painting visually looks like there's a lot going on, but all of the individual steps are very loose and somewhat messy. So don't feel like, oh, I got to do anything perfect here or there. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side of the moon. Just going to mix up a fresh little batch. It's just kind of scooping down, starting a little bit low, and this looks really cool if you get a little bit of this over the moon. There's a muffin top. Here's a muffin top here. And again, you can just pull some of this color down into the water. And even if it comes across as being very blue, that's okay, because it's just a foundation. It's just our shadows. And then we'll put highlights on. You can take your brush and you can kind of also just add some little dabby branches or something like that if you want. But I don't want you to really get too focused on thinking about I'm painting a tree, because when we start getting into this, especially on something like this, which is leaning more towards, at this point, Impressionism, you don't really want to get too focused on specific details or what it is. We're just going for basic suggestions of shapes. And that's something I like to use the word when we're painting something that's loose and more impressionistic. I like to use the word suggestionism, because are we really trying to impress anybody?
Mm-hmm. That's what Jerry Arnell calls it.
Does he?
Mm-hmm. He would talk about suggesting things.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I don't know if they call it suggestionism.
Oh, no. Okay. Yeah, because that's all it is. We're just suggesting. We're not impressing. So that gives us our little start there. What we can do now is let's go ahead and mix up a little bit of a pinkish color. So,
big brush?
What's that? Yes, we're going to keep with our big brush. Yeah. No, yeah, let's do that. It's okay if it's gets a little bit of the color from before. I don't want this to be, in fact, I want a little bit of that. I want it to be a little bit mauve-y, yeah. Because all we're going to do is we're going to take this color now and we're just going to tap. And you can use a smaller brush if you want, but I'm just adding some of this color in the top little maybe third or so of these shapes. Don't completely cover, just little bits.
It looks like you have very little paint on your brush.
Very little paint on the brush, and it's just very light dabbing, not doing a big brush stroke. It's just a tap, a tap, a tap.
So I guess if you think about it, the moon is going to light up the left side of these.
Well, it's going to light up the ones on the right. It's going to light up the left.
Yeah.
The ones on the right, the left is going to light up the right. But really, this is actually less concerned about that at this point. This is more just, we painted the shadows. Now we're bringing in the base tone of the canopy of the trees. Just a little bit. And we don't want it to be super bold right now. It's just a hint, just a suggestion. You can take a little bit of this color and
reflect it in the water.
Yep. A little bit, just kissed into the water there. Just a little mwah. Not chef's kiss. We're not into that mode yet. Just a little suggestion. Now, I wanted to do that then because our next step we're going to start working on is we're going to start working on our bridge. And the bridge is going to be just, you could have done this after the bridge, but I feel like it's a little easier to do it, do that part before the bridge is on there. And the bridge, guess what? We're going to use our coaster again. It's really being, I don't know if we've ever used the coaster this much.
Look what I did.
Jenny just washed her brush in her beverage. Oh no, did you rinse it? Did you scrub it in there first?
I can see red paint coming out of this big brush.
Well, why don't you take the brush out so less paint? Oh.
I'm going to go clean it.
Alright, so we'll fly solo for a little bit. It happens to all of us. I actually took a drink of paint water during a live class not too long ago. So the nice thing about using this coaster as our template for our bridge is we can kind of move it around and see where we want it. I don't want it going up into the moon too much, but this was actually, this idea of the moon and the bridge layered was my primary concept with this painting that I wanted to do using this coaster. So I had even told Jenny before, when she first mentioned she wanted me to redo the bridge painting, I was like, I'm going to do a moon and I'm going to do a bridge using the coaster as a template. They're going to be slightly offset. I don't want it to be perfectly like the top of the bridge is right on the edge of the moon. So we're going to slide it so it's somewhere like so. And down a little bit. Play around with it. See where you want it. I want this to be, down below our horizon. You're back. Round 2. And I'm going to use my number 4 brush. Now on the original painting, I really kind of came down to where the left and right of the center part of the left and the right of the coaster is. You can do that, it works fine. And so we're going to do that. I'm
So
using
we're offsetting.
Yeah, I'm using my number 4. I'm actually going to use...
Ooh, you hit the camera. You hit
Oops. Did I give it a rumble?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and do that on this one. Just kind of figure out about where halfway is. And I'm going to use the width of the brush. And I'm going to go to those halfway points. I'm using the number 4. This top part is really pretty thick and consistent. Now what I'm going to do is, much like I did with the moon where we did the reflection, I'm going to look and make sure this is pretty close. But for going down from here, I'm going to use the brush and just very loosely do a very wiggly jiggly, not even, it can even be broken at times, brush work. Carefully lift our coaster up and maybe kind of come back through and just add a little bit of this wiggle to the inside of our template here. And there we've got our reflection. Yay, that was easy. Now the other thing we're going to do with this, I'm going to switch brushes real quick. And again, I'm going to take black and mix it with a little red and a little blue just to not be quite so intensely black. Just want it to be just a real dark plum color. From the right edge of my bridge, I'm just going to kind of scribble a line across. I'm going to do the same thing on the left hand side. And one of the things that we're going to do with this is I'm going to kind of basically take this brush about a brush width.
What is this that you're painting?
It is the land
Okay.
that the bridge is connected to.
You mean it's not just a floating bridge?
It's not just a floating bridge in the middle of nowhere.
This looks like a bridge someone could not walk across.
Well, we're working on that right now.
Okay.
Actually, if you look at some of the real like traditional Japanese bridges, they're almost like ladders to start.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of bridges like this.
Yeah. So the next thing I'm going to do with this is I want to kind of choppy this up a bit. You're going to end up hiding some of your background. That's okay. That background is just that. It's background. It's not the focal. But I'm going to switch brushes real quick. I'm going to go back to my number 8 here. And basically I'm going to do like a little ski jump up. It'll just be easier to see over here.
Easier to walk on.
Yeah.
Daniel's here. Let's see. I believe the proper term is wibbly wobbly.
The proper term is wibbly wobbly. Now I've got a little bit of some wet paint here, so it's not wanting to fill, so I'm just going to leave that alone for right now so I can come back and fill it. Now the other thing is I'm going to take that kind of darkish blue color we made, I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it, and I'm going to kind of mimic our land. I'm just using the number 8. Again, just mimicking this into the water a bit. Crazy thing is, how long have we been painting? 45 minutes? We actually, this painting doesn't have a whole lot more to do, actually. It's time-consuming stuff, but what?
I just laugh because you say that every time you teach.
It's true. You do that too.
No, I do not.
Yeah.
Go back and rewind.
I'm just gonna start calling you out.
Ah.
Remember that time that you said you don't do that, but you do? You just did it again. So I want to wish Jenny a belated happy birthday.
And I want to wish Paul a belated happy birthday.
Both of our birthdays were last week. In fact, our live stream was right in between our birthdays.
Yeah. We're 4 days apart, birthdays and age.
Yep, she's older, so there's 4 days a year where I'm married to a cougar. I joke,
Did you
I
just
kid.
mix blue with that black? Is that what you
Yeah, just to lighten it up. I don't want it to be quite so intensely black. I want it to feel like it's reflecting in the water more than just existing in the water. All right, so this next step is one of these things that I feel is like a major catcher for people when they paint these types of bridges, and that is the railing and the style. I think they're called the stiles, the balusters, whatever they're called. And it's really easy.
Harry Styles.
People have a tendency of wanting to do them like rays. So, like
Thanks.
this.
Daniel says happy 29th birthday, guys.
No, thank you.
Permanently at 20.
Permanently 29 for 30 years. No, we're not that old. And what we want is we want each one of these to be straight vertical. So not, when we get down here, we don't want them going out like this. We want it going straight up.
You can parallel the side of your canvas. That's one thing that's helpful.
Well, one thing that I like to do is I like to start right at the top. And I'm just going to do one that's about, say 3/8 to a 1/2 inch. And then I also like to go, let's go just above where our little ramp comes in, and this is where we have to make sure we're going vertical, about the same length, same side on the other. Then I like to do one about halfway in between, again, making sure I'm going vertical. And Jenny's right, if you need to use like some kind of a straight edge to catch yourself, do it.
Or just like eyeball paralleling the edge of the canvas.
Yep.
That's what I always would tell people.
And then I'm going to do one more in between each of these, and I'm really trying to make sure these are all about the same height. Like so. Then I'm just basically going to connect the tops. There's our railing. If you want to do a quick little, very loose little suggestion that there's a secondary little line here, you can do so in the water as well. Doesn't hurt. Just adds some interest.
You could probably use the top of your coaster to paint this railing.
Yeah, yeah, you could. It's the only downside is the radius is going to be a little too small because it's, you know, it should be similar. Mine looks a little egg-like. Oh well. If you wanted to come back and add a little nub above each one, you can do that. If you want to add a second line in, you can do that. If you want to look one up online,
Don't do that.
you can copy that idea.
Did you have to look at one online?
No, I didn't, but I mean, we've painted this kind of bridge a lot of times.
Yeah, there's a Monet painting that we do that has this.
That's your painting.
Yeah, but it's a replica of a Monet painting.
Yeah. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of let all this dry a bit, this this area that we just painted. What we're going to do next is we're going to do some extra highlights on our trees. And we're going to use our number 8 brush to do that. Actually, let's not do that yet. Let's use our number 8, but let's go ahead and paint in our silhouette of our main cherry tree in the foreground. And actually, I'm going to go grab that original one that I did. The one that I ended up redoing.
Okay.
I'll be right back. It's just around the corner. Jenny, talk. Fill his face.
I didn't know you did an original.
Yeah, remember when I was fighting the paint?
Kind of.
So when we...
I was really, like, just focused on my swan.
When we both sat down to do our original paintings, one of the colors we had was really messed up.
Oh, yeah, it was the purple.
Yeah, and so we both were fighting, and we both were able to get our concepts done.
Fighting the color.
We were fighting not fighting each other. We were fighting the color, but we were able to get our concepts done. And so this was my original concept, and in a lot of ways I like it. There's a lot of things I like about it, but it was so frustrating because the paint was just pushing around and not drying, and
your swan's on steroids.
I mean, that was the best. Literally was the best I could do with the way the paint was acting that day. But you can see I did a really big tree, and I kind of like that, but I felt like it was taking away from the bridge, and that was supposed to be kind of our focal, one of the main things we were looking at. I like the moon, but you can see, I mean, it's like this whole area was, we were going to use a purple instead of, we were going to send you guys violet. Mm-hmm. And the violet we had in-house was...
so very bad.
It was really separated or something. It needed to be... but that was kind of like where we started. And then when we came back, and you had the same issues when you were painting with it. It's like you were trying to do details and you couldn't. But anyway, so I decided when I did it that I wanted the tree to not dominate the painting. I wanted all of this to be cohesive with it. I wanted the tree to be here, but I didn't want it to be like this big dominant block. So let's paint this little bonsai tree. And at first it might be a little hard to see, but we're just going to use black, just plain old black here. We're first going to paint a little island for it that's going to be just, it's going to overlap our reflection just a little bit. I'm just going to start out with kind of a flat line.
What color are you using?
Just black.
Okay.
And it's going to be like, oh, there's a little rock that comes out. And this is really, might be hard to see at first, which is why we kind of lightened it up in the background a little bit. But it's just kind of a little tufty mound here. Just going to fill this in. We'll reflect it in a minute. And what I want the tree to do is the trunk kind of goes off like this to the right, and then it takes a hard jog back to the left. I don't know if you guys can see that.
No. You're going to tilt it there. Wait, tilt it down that way. There you go.
It's really hard to see. It's really not that important, to be fair. You'll be able to see it, but it's really almost looks like a boomerang. And then I'm going to switch to my biggest brush. And I'm going to kind of create, kind of like we've done our little bonsai trees in the past. Almost feel like I don't know if you guys can't see that at all. Mm-mm. So let me do this.
I think if you tilt your canvas forward, you can. A little bit.
Oh, there we go. And so you can see the black. And it's just kind of like this little almost like the muffin top idea. It's really going to come to life when we do our highlights. So I'll tilt that again. You can see it. Just a couple of muffin toppy kind of like masses.
This is the part, if you mess up, no big deal. You can't
It
see
really,
it.
it really is not a big deal. And the only reason we do this with like this is it gives us. Actually, how about this? I'll show you the original. And you can get the feel for the overall shape is the pink. And
Wait, put that back up there.
Okay.
Okay.
yeah,
Let's see. So yours goes way out under the
it
bridge.
goes way out under the bridge with the black, and I'll do that now. This is really a nice sprawling,
Sprawling muffin top.
yeah, nice little sprawling bonsai tree, real broad. And actually we'll take a number 8 brush and we'll mix up a little blue, red, and black, mostly blue and red with a little touch of black, and we're just going to do a quick little suggestion reflection. Here's our trunk. Doesn't need to be perfect. Ever. Just a quick little suggestion. That might be a little bit on the purple side. That's alright. It's not going to hurt it. So we're going to need, the reason I wanted to do that now is we're going to need to let that dry. Now we can really sculpt this when we start bringing the pink highlights into it. And the pink highlights on that are going to be a really bright pop. We're also going to do some blossoms on the ground of the little island to define it a little bit better. And then we'll get our swans going. So this is the second time that we've done in paintings where we had you had kind of like a focal point, you know, painting like a swan or the owl, the barred owl that you did in, was that October? No, November. Where then I did a landscape painting that had the critter kind of tucked in there. So we did that with this one. So let's work next on stars in the sky. So we want all this to dry. We're going to use our smallest brush. We're going to not use the non-bristle end. We're going to get some white. I like to tap it once on the palette to get the extra little dollop off. And you guys can enjoy yourselves. Do as many as you want. They're just going in the sky, probably less in the lighter part near the moon. But work really hard to not just do a grid pattern. So maybe think about, oh, here's a cluster, and there's a cluster, and then here's a couple little random guys here and there.
Or look up a constellation.
Yeah, if you want to give yourself something to focus on, you can do that. But I try to just kind of be like as random as possible. And what I like to do is I like to dip the handle of the brush, and the first few are going to be fairly large. First little dabs, and I just kind of like to keep going until they're not doing anything at all anymore, because then you get a lot of little ones that maybe are just a subtle little hint. Again, you can, I do think there is a point of no, like there is a point where you can do too much with this. So, and I'm kind of getting close to that point where I like to have them, but I don't like them to dominate the sky.
What's wrong with you? I like to paint a lot of stars. I like to imagine a world without major city light pollution.
Right? That is true. And again, if you don't want to do the stars, you don't have to. But you should. Let me open a beverage. Now I am having a green tea ginger soda. Kid friendly. Kid friendly, but kids hate it. Because of the ginger.
And the green tea.
And the green tea. It's not a good flavor palette for kids. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working on our extra little bit of highlights. Now we want these highlights on the back part. We want these highlights to be lighter than what we did before, but we don't want it to be super bright pink still because we don't want it to take away from our foreground highlights we're going to do. I'm going to use my number 8. And I'm basically what I want to do is I've kind of got this kind of mauve-y, lavendery color here that I mixed before. I'm going to kind of shoot for that same color. So a little bit of blue, red, and white. And I'm just going to add a little extra white. We don't need very much of this paint at all. It's almost like silly putty color. Almost. Maybe a little extra red that's a little too purple. There we go. It just needs to be a little bit lighter than what we've already got in the background. And I'm just going to very carefully just dab a little bit here and there. Very small amount. Really kind of looking at like this mass. I'm looking like the moon is casting light this way, so it's going to just catch the edges here. This bigger one is like, oh, this has got some leaves and stuff that are sticking out a little further. You don't want to be too rigid with only doing it on the left, though, because it really...
there would be some in here further back that would stand out and catch
yeah, you're going to get a few, and you don't want to get too controlled with it. You want it to still have this loose, kind of sloppy feeling. Do a little bit over here as well. I think the older I get, the sloppier I get with my painting.
With a lot of things.
That was not an invitation for an insult.
You left the door open.
I didn't expect you to barge right through like a bull.
Do you even know me?
Apparently not. Now this color we just mixed up, we can add a little bit of darker to it again. And we can now use this as kind of our base color for our highlights on our bonsai tree. It's a little light. If it gets a little too light, you can just add a little bit of red back into it.
Sakura.
I just add a little bit more red back in.
How much paint do you have on your brush?
Very little.
Okay.
Very, very little. Or, like, I always kind of look at it like there's two ways to think about it. I either have a lot of paint and use very little pressure, or I have very little paint and use more pressure. More often than not, it's probably more pressure related than it is amount of paint on the brush related, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And what I mean by pressure is how hard do I push down? All right, so there we can be a little bit more focused on our brushwork. We can be a little bit more specific shapes. You can now take some of this color. Again, I'm adding a little bit more red to it. I want it to have more of a reddish look. You can dab some of this on to the ground, kind of define, because there are blossoms blowing in the wind. You can pop a few. I always think like, okay, here's my tree. If I want the wind to be blowing one direction. I don't want it going all over the place. So I'm choosing the wind is blowing maybe right to left or left to right just a little bit. A few little flyaways here and there. Put a few in the water. Just floating away. And take a little bit of this color and streak it into your highlights. Real precise stuff we're doing here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use our smallest brush now. And if you guys have watched before, most of you have, and some of you maybe haven't, but I like to use this brush to do bigger work than what it looks like it's designed to do. And so in this case, I'm going to mix up a really bright, light cotton candy pink.
Which brush, your smallest?
Mm-hmm. And with this one, I'm just going to dab in some really bright highlights along these areas that are sticking out towards the moon. The moon's going to be just really reflecting a lot of that sun's light right there. We talk about that when we're out walking. Jenny was talking about that the other night. She's like, when I was a little kid, it's kind of weird to process that the moon itself does not emit light.
That it's not like a giant glowing.
It's literally just reflecting the sun.
But yeah, when you're young, I mean, at least when I was young, that's what I always thought was like, it's just this big glowing light bulb, or glowing like a giant sun.
I think it's still kind of hard to process that that's not what it is. It's so bright.
Mm-hmm. When you think about like when it's a crescent moon and you're young, you just think it's really a crescent shape. Mm-hmm. That it's changed. You don't think of it as a giant ball. You're just seeing half of the reflection, a quarter of the reflection.
Yep, exactly. So we're almost done. I've got a couple little things we're going to work on. The one thing, the blue, in the instructions, I talked about adding blue into your water. You may not need to. And when I pull my original up, I'll show you what happened. When I originally did this, when I got done, I realized that my sky was really pretty blue. And then when I looked, if you actually look at the instructions, I'll pull the instructions up for those of you who don't have them. I had a very big difference between blue and very purple in the water. And so when I got around this point here, or about where we're at, somewhere between this point and where we're at, I looked at it and I said, there should be more similar color in the water to what's in the sky. And so I ended up going back and adding blue into the water. And this time around, I'm looking at it, and you've done it already. You went back and can I borrow yours real quick?
I suppose.
My sky ended up being very similar to my watercolor to begin with. Jenny had ended up with a bluer sky, and she came back a little while ago and added blue into the water to match it. So if you look in your sky and you've got a more blue than what's in the water, or more purple than what's in the water, mix up a color that's similar to your sky and just add some little streaks. And I'll show you how we do that. Because mine could use a little bit more blue. It's not far off, but I'll just do a little bit. So I'm gonna mix up a color that's still fairly purple, but has a little bit more blue like my sky does. And you really, I hate to put it this way, but you need to kind of look at your own painting and decide if you need to do this. That's a little too blue. There we go. And so you can just kind of take a little bit of this color, and you can use, I like to use the big brush because it does a little bit more. I guess that color makes more sense. And I'm not trying to cover everything, I'm just adding some little smudges, but I also want it to feel cohesive. So if I'm going to do a little bit over here, I'm going to need to pop a little bit over here on the right as well, so it feels like it belongs there. If you just do one little patch, it's going to feel like it doesn't belong. I actually like that, having a little extra blue in this. This painting can be really easy to just be lavender and pink, and it's kind of nice to stray a little bit from that. Nothing wrong with that either. That's actually, purple's probably, purple, violet, lavender, whatever, that's probably my favorite color to paint with. I feel like it's extremely versatile. Yeah, I like that. Now I'm going to use my smallest brush. I'm going to mix up a little highlight color for my tree. So I can just take one of my pink colors I've got going on here, add just a tiny bit of blue to it, so I get a real pale lavender. You could just use black and white, but I prefer to have a little bit of something more interesting than just gray. I'm trying to keep my head out of the way, sorry about that. And I'm just going to kind of throw a little highlight along the edge of my tree. This kind of gives it a little definition. You can throw a little hint in there, maybe a little hint. Don't get too carried away with doing the highlights on the tree, on the trunk and branches. It can get too busy in a hurry. So just a little bit. It's mostly shadowed. Do a little bit on this rock. Now really the only thing we've got left to do is our swans, and I would say, I mean, you could call the swans optional if you want. Wouldn't you think? Don't you think?
Yeah.
It's totally up to you. If you're like at this point in this painting and you're like, you know, I like it the way it is, I feel like I'm done.
Or paint them another day.
Or you can paint them another day. You could come in, like if this area still feels like it needs a little bit more highlights, you could come in. I'll show you how to do that real quick. I'm going to use like my number 4, really clean. And this is like, again, this is something as we keep painting together, you're gonna eventually start to look at a painting and go, I need something more here. And so you might look at this and go, I need a little extra pop of white, little movement in the water, maybe a little extra pop of white down in this lower area where it's starting to fade out. It's up to you. Sometimes less is more. Actually, a lot of times less is more. If you got a little darker patch of water up in here, you can add a little bit more white, but it doesn't need much. It's pretty white. Like mine right now is pretty white to begin with. So there's, you know, adding more is not going to do much. And you also don't want to like get rid of too much of the dark stripes either, because those are what make the white pop. There's the old saying, without the dark we can't have the light, and vice versa, right? I guess and vice versa is not part of it, but that's the way it works. All right, swans. Let's talk about the swans. And so the swans, I originally did just one. You remember I showed it to you. I'm all done. Here's one. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to add the second. So we got a comment on there if you could check that out. No? Never mind.
It's just a website.
Not a sponsor. So when I did the swans, I made like a kind of a, let me grab the original. They're really kind of a purple color. They're one of our purple colors, and you can add a little bit of black to them. But I think just blue, red, touch of white. You know, swans are white, typically. Well, there's black swans as well.
Yeah, I just saw a video on Reddit of some black swans. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. But they're silhouetted in this painting, so there's not going to be a lot of white going on. And in my description, I described, and it was funny because you came up with the same description when you were talking about it in our live stream last week. You want to think of the neck as a slightly overbent candy cane, is the way I described it. And so I'm going to do the first one right about here. Here's my slightly overbent candy cane. Give it a little bit of a bump for a head. And then I kind of just curl the body back. This guy's kind of behind this rock a little bit. And then for the body, rather than actually trying to paint the body, I'm just thinking about brushing their wings up. You get a little bit of color shining through, you get a little bit of color shining through, it's fine. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the second one. Again, slightly overbent candy cane. We're going to kind of create a heart. You don't have to create the heart if you don't want to. I just thought it would be fun. They look like they're getting ready to headbutt. Here's my kind of S shape. And then just wop, 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 wop. There's the wings. And if you take a little bit of this color, you can kind of reflect them into the water a little bit. In particular, this one. And there's our swans. That one looks like he's really leaning into kiss.
And she's like,
your breath is bad. Have you been eating slugs again?
Was that what they eat?
Mm-hmm. I kid you not. We talked about this last week. Grew up with ducks and geese for pets. You never have slug problems in your garden if you have ducks and geese. I'm going to mix up a little bit darker here. You can add a little bit of some extra dark color to the body if you want to.
Daniel says we should put a silhouette of a man scaramouche fishing off the bridge.
Actually, yeah. I've done it before.
Silhouette of a man. Throwing bread at the geese or slugs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean the swans.
Swans. Kind of want to put a top hat on one of them, but I'm not going to.
Put a crown. A tall, skinny crown on the girl. She can be like, I'm a queen. Stop trying to kiss me.
I think I toyed around with the idea of putting little babies in there too, but
Mine actually looks kind of like a duck. I didn't make its neck.
Yeah.
I did a single swan.
You did a cormorant.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the only other thing, like if you want to add more, I mean, we're basically done at this point. If you want to add more flower blossoms in the water or off to the side, you can. The other thing I have in the original, and you may want to do this, is I do have a couple of stars reflected in the water. I'll show you guys how to do that. And it's actually, there's a couple different ways to do it, but my favorite way to do it is to have my big brush nice and clean and dry. And just take your small brush, doesn't matter if you use, we'll use the backside like we did in our stars. And we'll just throw a few little stars in the water. Then with your big brush really dry, you can just pull straight down like so. And you can kind of come across and maybe get a few extras out of the paint on the brush. But straight down is the key. And that's it. That's all we're going to do. Last thing we're going to do is I'm going to do a star reflection signature in this corner. Not really. Just use a little bit of white, my smallest brush. Sign it. And I'm all done. Jenny, are you all done?
I'm gonna do a couple star reflections.
Jenny's gonna do a couple star reflections. So this is one that you could really, if you wanted to, you could play around with the geese a little bit, like maybe add a little extra shadowing to them. But again, it becomes this balance of how much detail do you really want to do. I mean, if you really want to do a lot of detail, go for it. Enjoy yourselves. But you don't have to. I mean, that's the main thing to understand is if you do decide to do a bunch of extra detail, it's optional. It's not necessary.
Okay, that's probably good.
All right, let's see. But
Put my brush in the wrong end in.
let's see how Jenny's turned out. I'm gonna put mine to the side. Jenny, I really like how yours turned out.
Thanks.
So there's Jenny's. Yours is much higher up in the. Oh, you did some land in the foreground here.
It felt too large of a space here, so I wanted to put some land in there.
Yeah, and the main difference is your bridge is higher up in the sky.
It's also hard to tell that I put red on the bridge.
Oh yeah, you did.
Red.
Yeah, like a red railing, like the red Asian style bridge in Animal Crossing.
That's what it is.
They look a lot alike. They look a lot alike. So, that's it, everybody. Bring us back, Jenny. Here we are. We're the same people that started.
Same people that started.
We have finished paintings.
We have finished painting number 10,892.
Yeah, over the years, it's been a lot.
A lot. Hey, ours almost flow together. That's
They
funny.
almost do.
2 moons. We're on Tatooine. No, wait, never mind.
Yeah, there's any planet in the solar system other than Earth, basically. But anyway, thanks for coming in tonight. Oh, let me show you guys next month's paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're right by you, aren't you?
Yeah.
Aren't they?
They're right here. So we'll be doing Jenny's painting first. And here's Jenny's painting. This is kind of a throwback painting for us. Yeah, there we go. It's the wishes and some grass and a fun, very spring-feeling sky. I really like this painting.
Yeah, I had fun with it. I think it'll be fun with the little dewdrops.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see, but there's little dewdrops on there, and this is a fun one. I like when we've done flowers and this type.
Kind of whimsical.
Yep, and then since I'll be teaching probably around St. Patrick's Day, I kind of always like to do kind of a St. Patrick's Day themed painting, and so here's to tilt. There we go. This is a very impressionistic painting in the foreground.
Yeah, it is.
It's a very busy painting. I actually did this painting without the castle on the little bit of land, and then it just something felt like it was missing. And so since I almost always do something slightly St. Patrick's Day themed. We don't like to get too involved in doing hardcore holiday paintings. But I just was like, it needs something, so I put the castle ruins out there, and it really kind of helped separate the background from the foreground. I really had a lot of fun with this painting.
Good.
So, and it'll definitely be one that'll teach you that you can be messy and sloppy and choppy and get the results you want without having to do a lot of real meticulous blending and fancy brushwork and stuff like that. So, with all that said, those will ship out the first week of March. And if you are new and haven't subscribed, get your for the subscription box. As long as you order by the end of February, you will get March's box as your first box.
And you can also buy. A lot of people don't like to do a subscription, so you can buy single painting kits. Like, I really like that owl you guys did in November, something like that.
Yeah, you can go back. We've been expanding to add more of the boxes as past boxes, like. Here's both of the paintings we did in August of 2021, or then you also have the option of purchasing individual kits that way too.
Yeah.
So, all that said,
like, subscribe, all that fun stuff.
You guys know the routine if you're on YouTube very much. So,
we'll see you soon.
Yeah, have a great rest of your weekend.
I'm gonna hit end stream.
Just click end stream. Click
Bye.
it. Bye.